In the outskirts of Detroit, in an industrial wasteland on the edge of the city, there's a sprawling landfill, a desolate stretch of broken things and forgotten refuse. Twisted metal, shattered glass, discarded furniture, and decomposing remnants of the past cover the ground. It's a place where dreams and possessions come to die, shrouded in the stench of rot and waste. But today, amidst these mountains of trash and broken promises, a discovery is made, an unexpected, almost unbelievable sight. Amid the piles of refuse, where rusty iron poles stick out like jagged bones and old newspapers flutter in the occasional gust of wind, a baby lies abandoned. He's small and fragile, bundled and soiled, torn clothing that barely provides warmth against the chill that cuts through the damp air. The sky above is gray and brooding, heavy with clouds that threaten rain, as if even the heavens are lamenting the little life left so carelessly among the discarded scraps of humanity. His name, as later would be known, is Jake, though no name is offered to him here. He lies silent, eyes wide, gazing up at the unfeeling sky. The landfill is eerily quiet, save for the distant clanging of machinery from a neighboring factory, muffled but present, as if to remind him he is still within a city, yet utterly alone. Jake's face is streaked with dirt, his cheeks smeared with remnants of dust and grime, and his tiny fingers clutch a piece of cloth, holding onto the last shred of security he seems to know. But he doesn't cry. There's no wailing, no pleas for help. It's as though even at this young age, he understands that no one is there to hear him, to see him. The sadness in his silence is almost tangible, hanging in the air like the landfill's pungent odor, impossible to ignore. In a city as harsh as Detroit, stories of neglect aren't unheard of, but something about Jake's situation is unique, almost surreal. One can only wonder what chain of events led him to be here, in this forsaken place, left to the elements and the uncertainty of survival. Has he already experienced enough hardship in his short life to know that crying brings no comfort? Has he learned, before even taking his first steps, that the world can be cold, indifferent? The thought lingers, unsettling and unresolved. A scrappy dog sniffs around a nearby heap of discarded food wrappers and retreats when it catches the scent of humans on him, the residue of people who were once present but are now long gone. Time passes slowly, each minute stretching out in an agony of abandonment, as the chill deepens and the world continues to turn, oblivious to the small life lying on the edge of survival. Above, a lone crow circles, its beady eyes scanning the landfill below as if it, too, is searching for something lost. It caws sharply, the sound echoing in the emptiness, cutting through the quiet like a jagged knife. The bird's call reverberates, and for a moment, it seems like the only answer to Jake's silent plea, a harsh reminder of the harsh world he's been born into. This is Detroit's discarded child, lying in the city's forgotten wasteland, surrounded by the relics of lives no longer remembered. Here, in the middle of nowhere, Jake waits. He doesn't know for what, but he waits nonetheless. His story begins here, in the filth and debris, in the shadow of a city that's forgotten him. But life has a way of weaving unexpected paths, and soon, the barren landscape around him will hold more than silence and solitude. The silence in the landfill is dense, pressing in on all sides as Jake lies there, unmoving. The wind picks up occasionally, scattering papers and dust around him, but otherwise, the air is heavy and still. Jake remains quiet, eyes wide and strangely alert for a child his age, but there is no movement, no sound. It's as though he's already accepted his invisibility, as though he knows that no one is coming to look for him. He is dressed in an oversized shirt, its original color lost beneath layers of grime, and pants torn at the knees, leaving his small legs exposed to the cold. There is a resignation in the way he lies there, almost as if he's made peace with his solitude. Most babies would be crying by now, screaming for comfort, but Jake stays silent, as though he understands, even without the words, that here, crying would be useless. The vastness of the landfill stretches out in every direction, creating a landscape of isolation that matches the loneliness he must feel. In this forsaken place, there's no one to hear him, no one to care. The city, with its towering buildings and bustling streets, feels a world away, even though it's just a few miles down the road. Here, he is cut off, invisible to the world, abandoned by those who should have loved him. A single rat scurries nearby, stopping to sniff a piece of bread that's long since grown stale. Jake's gaze follows the creature for a moment, but he doesn't reach out, doesn't move. He simply watches as the rat grabs its meal and disappears into the mound of trash beside him. He is too small, too weak, to follow, to make any attempt to escape. The reality of his situation is clear. He is alone. Hours pass in this manner, with Jake lying still, his eyes occasionally blinking, but otherwise devoid of expression. The silence is almost suffocating, pressing in with each passing moment, amplifying the sense of abandonment. There's no one to offer a soothing voice, no gentle touch to reassure him. He has only the landfill, a silent witness to his pain, a place where he is but another discarded piece of life. The evening shadows begin to lengthen as the sun dips low in the sky, casting a dim orange glow over the wasteland. A nearby bottle catches the light, reflecting a brief glint that seems to highlight Jake's form for a moment, as if calling attention to him in the vast sea of garbage. But it fades quickly, leaving him once again in the dimness, a tiny figure lost among the waste. As night approaches, the chill in the air intensifies, seeping into his thin clothing, making him shiver slightly. His eyes finally close, whether in exhaustion or resignation, it's hard to tell. There is no comfort here, no warmth, just the harsh reality of his abandonment, sinking in deeper with each passing second. Jake drifts into a restless slumber, surrounded by the silence and the unyielding solitude of the landfill. His only companions the broken objects and discarded scraps left to rot. But even in this silence, there's a faint glimmer of hope, a whisper of something about to change, though he doesn't know it yet. In the darkness of this cold night, a new presence will emerge, something unexpected, something that will finally break through the relentless loneliness that has claimed him. Jake's story has only begun, and the silence that now envelopes him is about to be shattered in a way he could never have imagined. Night settles over the landfill, bringing with it a biting cold that seeps into every crack, every crevice, leaving no shelter from its reach. Jake stirs slightly in his sleep, pulling his small arms closer to his chest, instinctively trying to preserve what little warmth he can find. The sky above is a sheet of darkness, heavy with clouds, blanketing the world in a silence so profound that it's almost oppressive. But somewhere in the distance, a faint sound breaks through the quiet, a soft clop-clop of hooves echoing through the landfill. It's barely audible at first, blending in with the natural hum of the city far off in the background, but it grows steadily louder, approaching with a steady rhythm that is both deliberate and calming. Through the haze of trash and debris, a figure begins to emerge. It's a horse, an elegant creature with a deep brown coat that catches the faint glint of moonlight peeking through the clouds. Her mane flows like silk, moving gently with each step, and her dark eyes hold a depth of intelligence and warmth that seem out of place in this wasteland. Her name, as will soon be known, is Hope, a fitting name for what she brings to this desolate place. Hope moves gracefully, her hooves navigating the uneven ground with a confidence that suggests she knows exactly where she is going. Her breath is visible in the cold night air, forming small clouds that dissipate quickly, yet her eyes remain fixed, her focus unbreakable. She's come to the landfill for a reason, drawn by an instinct that even she doesn't fully understand. It's as if something beyond her control has guided her here, to this forgotten corner of the world. As she nears, Hope's gaze falls upon the small bundle lying amid the refuse, almost camouflaged against the drab surroundings. She pauses, taking in the sight of the child, her large, gentle eyes softening with something akin to understanding. With a quiet snort, she steps closer, her movements slow and careful, as though sensing the fragility of the life before her. Jake, sensing a presence near him, stirs from his sleep, his eyes fluttering open. He blinks, momentarily disoriented, as he gazes up at the silhouette of the horse standing over him. For a moment, he's unsure of what he's seeing. The world around him has been so devoid of warmth and life that the sight of Hope feels like a dream. But as his eyes adjust, he realizes she's real, her presence as solid and reassuring as the ground beneath him. Hope lowers her head, her nostrils flaring slightly as she reaches out, her muzzle brushing gently against his cheek. The touch is soft, almost motherly, and for the first time in his young life, Jake feels something he's never known: comfort. A wave of warmth spreads through him, melting the chill that has wrapped around his heart as he reaches out instinctively, his small fingers brushing against her fur. The two of them, an unlikely pair, a lost child and a wandering horse, are bound together in that moment, as if fate itself has woven their paths together. Jake's fingers tighten around a tuft of Hope's mane, clinging to her as though she's his only lifeline, and perhaps, in this moment, she is. The landfill fades into the background, the harsh reality of his abandonment momentarily forgotten as he gazes into her gentle eyes. Hope stands protectively over Jake, a silent guardian, her presence a testament to resilience and compassion. She knows he needs her, and without hesitation, she has come to be by his side, a symbol of hope in a world that had shown him none. The landfill, once an oppressive, silent void, now feels different with Hope's presence. She stands beside Jake, her strong, steady warmth breaking through the cold isolation that has engulfed him. Jake clutches at her mane, small fingers digging into her thick, soft hair, grounding himself in her presence. He looks up at her, eyes wide with wonder and something he doesn't yet understand, a glimmer of trust, of belonging. Hope gazes back at him with an expression that seems almost human, her dark, knowing eyes filled with compassion. She lowers her head, bringing her muzzle close to Jake's face, and gently nudges him. Jake, still uncertain, remains frozen for a moment, but slowly, he lets out a tiny breath. It's the first sign of relaxation, a quiet surrender to the comfort she offers. In that silence, Hope's breathing is the only sound, steady and rhythmic, calming Jake in a way he's never known. The landfill fades away as he becomes aware of her presence, of her warmth, of the soft velvet of her nose brushing against his face. Jake's small, dirty hands reach up, gently patting her, almost in awe, as if confirming that she is real, that this comfort isn't just a fleeting dream. They stay like this, two souls connected by the unlikeliest of circumstances, each finding something in the other that they didn't know they needed. For Hope, it's a purpose, an instinct that has driven her here, guiding her to this child who so desperately needs someone to care. For Jake, it's the simple, indescribable relief of not being alone. After a long moment, Jake whispers, his voice barely audible, "Are you here for me?" His words are soft, filled with a vulnerability that only a child can carry. He doesn't expect an answer, and yet, Hope's gentle nudge feels like a response, as though she's affirming her purpose in his life, as if she's saying, "Yes, I'm here for you." Jake's voice grows a little stronger as he continues to talk to her, his words spilling out in fragments, a patchwork of thoughts and feelings he's held in silence. I was waiting," he whispers, clutching her mane. "I didn't know if someone would come. It was so cold." His voice breaks slightly, the weight of his loneliness evident in every word. Hope shifts closer to him, wrapping herself protectively around his small frame, blocking the cold air and the harshness of the landfill with her solid presence. Jake leans into her warmth, his tiny body relaxing as he sinks into the sense of safety she provides. There are no more words, but in the silence that follows, a bond forms. One built not on language, but on an unspoken promise of protection and trust. The minutes pass, and night deepens around them, but Hope remains steadfast, a silent sentinel beside him. The darkness no longer feels so daunting with her there. Her presence fills the void that had once threatened to swallow him whole. For the first time, Jake feels like he can close his eyes without fear, like he can rest, knowing that he's not truly alone. In this abandoned wasteland, amid the refuse and the ruins, Hope has brought a light, a quiet, undeniable promise of survival. And for Jake, that is enough. He falls asleep with his head resting against her, his fingers still tangled in her mane, and for the first time in his life, He drifts into a peaceful sleep, wrapped in the warmth of a friend he didn't know he needed but now couldn't imagine life without. As the landfill plunges into the depths of night, the temperature drops sharply and the chill in the air intensifies. A biting wind sweeps through the expanse of debris, stirring the trash and carrying with it the smell of decay and forgotten things. Jake, nestled close to Hope, stirs but does not wake. Her solid presence shields him from the worst of the cold, creating a cocoon of warmth that allows him to sleep undisturbed. Hope stands over Jake, her legs firmly planted on the uneven ground, her body tense with vigilance. Her large brown eyes, soft and understanding with Jake, now scan the dark surroundings with a sharpness that hints at her protective instincts. Every now and then, her ears twitch, attuned to the faintest of sounds, a rustle in the trash, the distant bark of a stray dog, the echo of movement from the nearby factories. She is aware of every sound, every shift, every possible threat in the environment. Her posture remains steady, unwavering, as she takes on the role of Jake's silent guardian. In the quiet hours of the night, Hope's focus sharpens, her every instinct tuned to the small life she has chosen to protect. As if sensing her vigilance, Jake curls closer, finding warmth not only in her physical presence, but in the sense of security she provides. Even in his sleep, he clings to her mane, his fingers wound tightly around the coarse hair, unwilling to let go of the one source of comfort he's known. The minutes turn to hours, and still, Hope remains watchful. Her gaze moves from shadow to shadow, her nostrils flaring slightly whenever a gust of wind brings a new scent her way. She stays still, an unmoving figure against the night, her body blocking the cold and her eyes keeping Jake safe from the dangers that lurk unseen. At one point, a pair of yellow eyes glint from the shadows, perhaps a fox or another stray animal foraging in the landfill. The creature pauses, curious, but one glance at Hope's unwavering stare is enough to send it scurrying away. Hope's protective stance, her silent strength, is enough to deter any creature that might pose a threat. She stands as a fortress, a shield, her very presence a promise that Jake is no longer alone in his struggle. As the hours pass, the night deepens, and the landfill grows even quieter. The factory sounds fade into silence, and even the stray animals seem to have disappeared, retreating into their own shelters. The sky above is a blanket of stars, faintly visible through the clouds, casting a dim, silvery glow over the wasteland. In this muted light, Hope's silhouette is a constant, a source of peace in an otherwise unkind world. By the early morning, as the first light of dawn begins to creep over the horizon, Jake stirs, his eyes blinking open to see the soft colors of morning spreading across the sky. He looks up at Hope, her figure still standing over him, and a small smile tugs at the corners of his mouth. For the first time, he feels something he can't quite name. A mixture of gratitude and hope, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, he's no longer alone. Hope lowers her head, meeting his gaze with a look of quiet understanding. No words are needed between them. Her presence speaks louder than any words could. She has watched over him, protected him, given him a night of peace in a world that had offered him nothing but hardship. And as dawn breaks, the bond between them grows stronger, forged in the silence of the night and sealed with the promise of companionship and resilience. The first light of dawn begins to reveal the outline of the landfill, casting a soft, golden glow over the piles of garbage, a striking contrast to the bleak setting. A thin mist rises from the damp ground, adding an almost ethereal quality to the mounds of debris. Jake is awake now, still nestled close to Hope, watching as the morning light drives away the darkness of the night. In the distance, two figures move among the mountains of trash. They are Sam and Mike, two seasoned scrap collectors, combing through the landfill for anything of value. They know this place like the back of their hands and are used to the stench, the weight of the work, and the routine of a place forgotten by society. But today, something unusual catches their attention. "Look at that," Sam says, pointing toward the silhouette of the horse in the distance. He squints, trying to make sense of what he's seeing. "Is that a horse?" Mike, just as surprised, follows Sam's gaze and sees the shape of Hope amid the trash, with a small child beside her. "But what is that?" he mutters, almost in disbelief. There's a kid there. The two men exchange glances, concern growing on their faces. They quickly but cautiously move toward the horse and the boy, driven by both curiosity and an instinct to help. As they approach, Hope lifts her head, her eyes watchful, regarding them with a defensive posture. She doesn't move, but there's something in her gaze that makes the men hesitate. "Easy there, girl," murmurs Sam, raising his hands in a gesture of peace, sensing the tension in Hope's body. "We don't want to hurt anyone. We just want to help." Jake, who has been quiet until now, looks at the men with a mix of curiosity and fear. He scoots closer to Hope, gripping her mane tightly, clearly wary of the strangers now approaching. Hope's stance conveys a clear message. She's there to protect the boy, and she won't allow any approach he isn't comfortable with. Mike crouches slightly, trying to appear less intimidating. In a low, calm voice, he speaks to Jake. "Hey there, kid. It's okay. My name's Mike, and this is Sam. We're here to help, all right?" Jake just stares, saying nothing, but his eyes are alert, watching every move the men make. Hope stands firm, her eyes fixed on the two, ready to intervene if they come too close. The protective barrier around Jake is unmistakable, and Sam realizes this. He exchanges a glance with Mike and murmurs, "Let's take it slow, no rush." He needs to see that we're here to help. After a few moments of silence, Sam tries a different approach. He sits down on the ground a little distance away, showing that he's willing to wait as long as needed. He reaches into his pocket, a piece of bread he'd saved for his breakfast, and places it on the ground nearby, without pressure, just leaving it there as a gesture of peace. Gradually, the tension seems to ease. Jake still holds tightly to Hope, but his eyes drift to the bread, and he begins to relax a bit. Sensing Jake's shift, Hope also softens her defensive stance, though she remains alert. Finally, Jake takes a tentative step toward the men, his small feet moving slowly over the unstable ground. He looks at Sam and Mike, still wary, but with Hope's presence beside him, he finds the courage to inch a little closer. It's a small step, but a significant one. Sam smiles, careful not to make any sudden movements. "That's right, kid. We're here to help." As Jake inches closer, there's a hint of caution in his eyes that even his young face can't hide. His grip on Hope's mane remains tight, his fingers buried in her thick, comforting hair. Though he's taken a small step toward the two men, a sense of wariness lingers. He's been let down before, abandoned by those who were supposed to care for him, and trust doesn't come easily. Sam and Mike stand still, careful not to make any sudden movements that might startle him. They're seasoned scavengers, toughened by years of sifting through the landfill's contents. But today, something in this moment makes them unusually gentle. Jake's mistrust is palpable, his small frame tense, his eyes flickering between the two men and his steadfast protector, Hope. She remains at his side, her posture calm but alert, acting as both a comfort and a barrier for the boy. "Take your time, kiddo," Sam says softly, his voice low and steady. "We're not here to rush you." Mike nods, giving Jake a reassuring smile. "Yeah, no pressure. We just want to make sure you're okay." He glances at Hope, acknowledging her protective role. "And your friend here, looks like she's taking good care of you." Jake watches them, his gaze suspicious. He's seen adults come and go, faces that offer promises but disappear just as quickly. There's a hint of defiance in his eyes, a small spark that seems to say, "I don't need anyone but Hope." The men sense this, respecting the unspoken boundary between them. After a long silence, Jake speaks, his voice barely more than a whisper. Why are you here?" Sam kneels down, bringing himself to Jake's eye level without getting too close. "We're here to collect things, old metal, glass, stuff we can recycle. But when we saw you and your friend," he pauses, searching for the right words. "Well, we couldn't just walk away." Jake's lips tighten, as if he's holding back a response. Finally, he glances down, his grip on Hope's mane never loosening. Everyone walks away, he mutters, barely loud enough for them to hear. The weight of those words settles heavily on Sam and Mike, both men feeling a pang of sadness for the child in front of them. There's a lifetime of disappointment in his voice, a mistrust that runs deep for someone so young. Mike, sensing the boy's pain, speaks gently. "Well, not everyone, kid," he says, his voice sincere. "Sometimes people stay. Sometimes they're here to help." Jake remains silent, his gaze returning to Hope, as if seeking her approval. She stands still, her gentle eyes meeting his with a calm reassurance. The trust he feels for her is unbreakable, and with her by his side, he feels a flicker of courage, a small willingness to consider the possibility of help. After a pause, Jake looks back at the two men, studying their faces with the scrutiny of someone much older. He doesn't move closer, but he doesn't pull away either, as if he's testing the waters of this fragile connection. The tension lingers, but so does a quiet hope, woven through the air like a thread waiting to be drawn tight. Sam speaks again, his tone soft and patient. "How about this? We won't come any closer, and we'll leave when you want us to. But if you ever need anything at all, we'll be around." Jake nods slightly, an unspoken acceptance of their offer, though his distrust remains. Hope gives a soft nudge, as if encouraging him, and he finally loosens his grip on her mane just a bit, letting himself relax, if only for a moment. In that quiet morning light, with Hope beside him and the two men waiting patiently nearby, Jake takes a step toward something he's never known. A hesitant trust, fragile but present. And for now, in the stillness of this place, that's enough. The morning sun rises higher, casting warm light over the landfill as a tentative calm settles over the scene. Jake stands between Hope and the two men, Sam and Mike, his small form still tense but less guarded. There's an unspoken understanding in the air, a fragile sense that maybe, just maybe, these strangers mean no harm. Sam, noticing Jake's guarded yet hopeful expression, speaks gently. "Kid, I know you've got every reason not to trust us. I wouldn't either, if I were you. But sometimes people surprise you." He lets the words hang, giving Jake time to process them without pressure. Jake's gaze shifts to Sam, his small face scrunched in thought. The words seem to stir something inside him, a flicker of memory or maybe just a spark of curiosity. He loosens his grip on Hope, but his fingers still hover near her mane, a tether to the only consistent warmth he's known. Mike takes a small step closer, his posture low and relaxed, careful not to intrude on the safe bubble Jake and Hope have created. "Look, Jake," he begins, his voice calm. "We're not here to take anything from you. We just want to make sure you're okay. And maybe we can help you find someplace warm, somewhere safe." Jake looks down, his face hidden by his messy hair, but his voice, small and tentative, rises. Is it far from here?" There's a vulnerability in his tone, a willingness to imagine a place beyond the cold wasteland he's known. Sam, sensing the shift, nods. "Not too far. We can go slow. And Hope can come too." He glances at the horse, understanding the importance of her presence. "She can stay right by your side the whole time." This assurance seems to soothe Jake's lingering doubts. He looks up at Hope, as if to seek her approval, and she meets his gaze with a gentle nudge, her warmth grounding him. With a deep breath, he finally releases her mane, his small hands falling to his sides. Mike, encouraged by Jake's response, offers him a comforting smile. "You know, kid, it's okay to be scared. I'd be scared too. But sometimes we just need to take a chance." There's a pause, a quiet stillness as Jake absorbs the words. He nods, a barely perceptible movement, but it's enough. It's a signal, a subtle surrender, his way of saying he's willing to trust, just a little. With that nod, the men understand they've been given permission to help, and they don't take the responsibility lightly. "All right then," Sam says, his voice filled with quiet relief. "We'll go nice and slow, okay? Just follow us, and we'll take it one step at a time." Jake takes a tentative step forward, his eyes never leaving Hope as she moves alongside him. The two men walk a few paces ahead, guiding the way but giving Jake and Hope the space they need. Jake clings to Hope's presence, glancing at her every few moments as if to reassure himself that she's still there, his anchor in this uncertain journey. They move slowly across the rough terrain of the landfill, each step pulling Jake further from the isolation that had once defined his world. The path ahead feels unfamiliar and daunting, but with Hope beside him and the men leading the way, there's a new feeling stirring within him. Something warm and fragile. A quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, things can change. The group reaches the edge of the landfill, where the smell of the city mingles with the fresh air. Sam and Mike pause, looking back at Jake, offering silent encouragement. Jake, gathering his courage, takes a final glance at the landfill behind him, a farewell to the only place he's known. He turns back, his small feet stepping forward into a new world, leaving behind the isolation and the cold, ready to face whatever awaits with Hope and his new guardians. As they leave the edge of the landfill behind, Jake's small form begins to relax, each step forward releasing a bit more of the fear and tension he's held onto for so long. The city unfolds before them, a place of concrete and steel, a world both intimidating and promising in its unfamiliarity. Jake clings to Hope, her steady presence beside him, the bond between them deeper than words could ever express. The journey is slow, with Sam and Mike keeping a respectful distance, allowing Jake and Hope their quiet space. When they reach the edge of a nearby neighborhood, a simple, quiet area with modest homes and worn sidewalks, Sam stops, turning to face Jake. His expression is soft, a mixture of relief and something close to admiration. He's watched Jake struggle to trust, to take those first steps out of his loneliness, and he can sense the bravery it took for the boy to come this far. Jake, Sam says, his voice kind. You did good, kid. We're almost there. He gestures to a small community shelter nearby, a place where they know he'll be safe and warm, a place where someone can care for him until a more permanent solution is found. Jake looks up at Sam, then at Mike, and finally back at Hope. His grip on her mane loosens, and he takes a step closer to the men, his face showing a mixture of gratitude and hesitation. He's been so used to solitude, to relying on himself, that the thought of saying goodbye to Hope feels like a loss he isn't sure he can handle. She's been more than just a companion. She's been his protector, his silent confidant, and now, as they near the shelter, the realization that he may have to let her go tugs painfully at his heart. Hope, sensing his inner turmoil, nudges him gently, her large, warm eyes meeting his with a calm reassurance. She lowers her head, bringing her face close to his, and in that quiet gesture, she communicates a promise that no matter where he goes, her presence, her protection, will always stay with him. Jake reaches up, his small hands gently touching her face, and in a voice barely more than a whisper, he murmurs, "Thank you, Hope, for everything." A few tears slip down his cheeks as he strokes her nose, his gratitude mingled with the bittersweet ache of saying goodbye. Sam and Mike watch in respectful silence, their hearts touched by the raw, simple beauty of the boy's farewell. They understand the depth of his bond with the horse, the significance of this moment, and they give him all the time he needs. Finally, Jake steps back, his eyes still on Hope, a mixture of sadness and hope shining in his gaze. With one last look, Hope raises her head, her own silent goodbye expressed through a calm, knowing gaze. She watches as Sam and Mike gently lead Jake toward the shelter, their presence a new kind of protection for the boy who had once known only loneliness. As they walk away, Hope stands motionless, her figure silhouetted against the early morning light. She's done what she came to do, fulfilled the silent mission that had drawn her to Jake. And as the distance between them grows, she turns and walks back into the world she came from, a solitary figure returning to the vast unknown, her spirit forever tied to the life she saved. For Sam and Mike, the journey is as much a reflection as it is a rescue. Jake's story, his strength, and his quiet resilience have left a mark on them. As they lead him into the shelter, they are filled with a sense of purpose, a deeper understanding of compassion and human connection. They know that, like Hope, their encounter with Jake has changed them in ways they hadn't anticipated. For Jake, the memory of Hope will stay with him, a constant reminder of the unlikely friend who showed him he was worth protecting, worth caring for. And as he takes his first steps into the shelter, he knows that no matter where he goes, her spirit will always be with him, a silent guardian watching over his journey. As Sam and Mike walk away from the shelter, leaving Jake in the care of compassionate hands, the morning sun rises higher, casting a warm light over the quiet streets. The men walk in silence, each lost in thought, their minds replaying the moments they shared with Jake and the powerful bond they witnessed between him and Hope. The landfill now feels like a distant place, a stark contrast to the feeling of hope that lingers in their hearts. Sam finally breaks the silence, his voice thoughtful. "You know, Mike, I've seen a lot in my life, but I've never seen anything like that. That boy, he's got a strength in him, something you don't see every day." Mike nods, his expression somber. "Yeah, that kind of loneliness, that's something no kid should ever know. But somehow, he survived it. And that horse, she was like a guardian angel, wasn't she?" They fall silent again, reflecting on the harsh reality of a world that could leave a child abandoned in such a desolate place. It's a reminder of the cracks in society, the ways people can fall through them, unnoticed and forgotten. Sam and Mike have seen it before in their work at the landfill. Lives discarded like the very trash they sift through each day. But Jake's story is different. His resilience, his quiet courage in the face of abandonment, has left a deep impact on them. As they walk, Sam shakes his head slowly. It makes you think, doesn't it? How many kids, how many people, are out there, forgotten like that, just waiting for someone, anyone, to see them? Mike's eyes drift to the horizon, where the cityscape stands in sharp relief against the morning sky. Maybe it's not about the big gestures, Sam. Maybe it's just about being there, about noticing when someone's slipping through the cracks. And maybe that's enough to change a life. They reach the edge of the landfill, the place where their paths had crossed with Jake's in such an unexpected way. The familiar smell of rot and decay fills the air, but something feels different, almost lighter, as if the weight of their work has taken on a new meaning. The memory of Hope, the horse who appeared seemingly out of nowhere, still lingers in their minds, a symbol of quiet compassion, of protection, of an unbreakable bond formed in the unlikeliest of places. For Jake, his journey is just beginning. Inside the shelter, he sits in a small, cozy room, still clutching the memory of Hope close to his heart. Though he's unsure of what lies ahead, he feels a warmth that gives him courage, a reminder of the horse who stood by his side through the cold and darkness. She has shown him that he is worthy of love, of care, of a future beyond the isolation he once knew. In the days to come, Jake will carry the spirit of Hope with him, her presence woven into the fabric of his life. She will be there in his moments of doubt, in the quiet of the night, a reminder that he is never truly alone. And though she has returned to the unknown, her impact on his life is profound, a gift that will shape him in ways he's yet to understand. As Sam and Mike turn back to their day's work, their thoughts linger on the boy they saved and the silent guardian who watched over him. They carry with them a renewed sense of purpose, a quiet promise to be more than just bystanders in the world. And in the stillness of the landfill, in the heart of a city that has forgotten so many, there's a new hope. A hope that one act of kindness, one moment of compassion, can change a life forever. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and watch this next story. It's incredibly moving.